welcome back to my YouTube page. I'm Fire Lotus the Witch, and here we are going to be going over multiple different types of questions that I've been asked. There we go. I'm excited with these, But, hi, hello, I'm Fire Lotus the Witch, and I'm experimenting with the camera views. Hopefully I will get to a point where, full screen. Anyways, here are some questions and things that I've heard and or specifically been asked that confuse a lot of people when it comes to becoming a witch and or starting your practice. For one, most importantly, not everybody is Wiccan, therefore not everybody is going to believe in the threefold path. To go a little bit more into that, if you are drawn to the chakra systems and or using the term karma, I heavily suggest you go and actually do research into the actual root of that word, as in go from the origins of it. Research what it actually means, because what it truly means is where it's originally from versus here is what we have been taught in the Western world are two completely different things. So that's definitely going to help you as well. Let me adjust this light really quick. Again, y'all know me, I'm learning as I go. So, okay, now with that, do I need an altar? No. You do not necessarily have to have and or use an altar. And an altar can be anything. There is no right and or wrong way to set up said altar. I have seen people, and I personally at multiple points, especially when I used to be in the witch's the broom closet, I would actually either get a printout of like an altar design and or I would sketch one using a notebook. So literally when you needed it, all you had to do is put it down, flap it up. Boom. You have a portable altar. Now with that, if you actually start practicing a specific path, a magical path, not Wicca, but let's say traditional witchcraft and or Wicca, depending on the path that you're on and or the specific branch of the giant tree that is witchcraft, they may have specific preferences for you to actually set up your altar, but in the very, very end of it all, it depends on what you yourself feel like adding to it. Also, I would suggest starting out by making an altar for yourself as well. It can help with self-love, self-imagery, and especially if you're working with deities or gods or goddesses or even spirits, and or your ancestors, which I'm also going to go over some things about that as well. These beings are going to want you to also be healthy. That is physically healthy and mentally healthy. So yeah, always that. Also with that, you do not have to actually work with any type of spirit and or deity or divine being in order to practice witchcraft. It's kind of like that saying where you can practice Wicca but not practice witchcraft, and then you can also practice witchcraft but not be a Wiccan and or look at it as a religious way, because Wicca actually is a new age religion. And it is new. It's not old. It's new. So, with that being said, okay. But yeah, with the altar, if you want one, you can totally do one. You can have multiple different types of altars. And like I said before, there is no wrong and or right way. Do I have to cast a circle every single time I do a working and or spell work? That is completely 100% up to you. There are some paths that will only do a actual full-on circle when more of a ritualistic. And the reason that is the point of the circle. It's protection, but most importantly, in the way that I see it is a linear space. It's a space between places. Also, when you use a circle outside, please try not to use salt, especially if you're using it directly on the ground, because if too much salt is introduced to land, it basically goes through the process of what is known as razzing. At certain points in times, we'll say right now for the sake of this video, back in the not King Arthur, but the Knights Castle days, that was one way that they would actually basically get people to surrender was, if you have a castle, I'm going to go hide in that, I'm protected. Well, they would wind up dumping large amount of salts around the castle. That way they couldn't actually grow anything. So they would basically eventually starve them out. So look into other things that you can use that's more natural, like cornstarch, flour, things like that, but also that could possibly also benefit the environment that you're working with. With that being said as well, you need to incorporate bioregionalism, and the amazing thing about bioregionalism is you don't have to go out and spend money. Bioregionalism is the specific research and watching and or observing the the natural and or the normal around the specific location that you are living. That can be specifically just at your house, or it can be in the small town that you live in, things like that. What you'll be doing, this will take an entire year because you need to examine it from all seasons. You're going to make a list of animals that you see all the time versus the rare occasions when you see something. Like one of the rare occasions here is we saw a fox one day run across the road. We normally don't see foxes, even though we live on a lake. Believe it or not, we don't really see snakes that much around here. Um, so things like that. Well, why is this important in my practice? Because if I have a tree, say I have an oak tree on my yard, and I have a huge flock or a small little gathering, I don't know what it's called, of red jays and blue jays, right? And they come back to the same spot and nest every single year. If I go out and ask my ancestors or deity that I work with, I need a divine sign, and then I randomly see one, you're kind of going to question, is that just normal, and or is it a divine sign? Now with divine signs and or signs like that, normally you will get a feeling that kind of washes all over you, and or you kind of just pause. But if you know what's normal and what's abnormal, it can help with that. Not to mention, if you also study the behavior of your animals throughout an entire season, and not just your animals or the animals on the property, but the land in itself, you can also grow more in depth with it. You can start growing that relationship with it. Not to mention, your land and the animals around you can predict and help you predict so many things when it comes to weather. There are so many other different types of divinations that you can use while incorporating your land. Now, what happens if you want to work with your land spirits? Well, you just got to kind of get up and go out there. Now, with that, land spirits are going to be different than more like deities. I consider all deities archetypes depending on the person, because you may have similar experiences, but they're going to be very different because we ourselves perceive the world differently. So with land spirits, you kind of got to think like they're just a regular spirit, as in, they have their own set of rules. They have their own personality. There are some land spirits that may love to work with you and or assist in your practice, and then there are others that will have absolutely nothing to do with you. And if you try to, like, they can scare you, is what I'm trying to say. They can be aggressive, but again, when we're going into this and we're going into witchcraft, which is another thing we're going to be talking about, not every negative spirit you come across is like evil. They're not demons. You have to realize that there are certain spirits that they have their own consciousness. They themselves have their own personalities. Um, so always be cautious of that. Primarily be respectful. Straight up, when it comes to working with spirits, infernals, because I hate using the term demon. It's been used many times, and to me it's a Christian aspect of it, especially when what people conjure in their minds when they hear the term demon. So I just say infernals. But, um, you know, they have their own thing, and just be respectful. Same with working with deities if you decide to work with one. With that and working with deities, you do not have to just wait for them to come to you. You can totally do research on the history of it, the lore, what they like, the do's and the don'ts, give them an offering of any kind. Remember, even if you can't find an object or a specific item that is associated with that deity or even spirit, if you can find something very similar and or just listen, they will let you know. For an example, I have a bottle of Fireball whiskey and a bottle of Southern Comfort, on my altar on top of a Halloween decoration my partner got me that lights up. But specifically on that space on top of it, that is Loki space. What do I mean by that is Loki space? I primarily work with my ancestors, but I do work with a few deities off and on. We randomly went to a liquor store so my partner could cash his check. And I know that sounds sketchy, but there are places like that. Loki was just like, yo, Fireball. What do I mean by that? What I meant by that was I had a random thought that popped into my head that wasn't mine, that had Loki's energy. Now, a better way to say Loki's energy is obviously, and I believe the color is also associated with him. If not, then it's like the Marvel shit. But green, I automatically associate Loki with green. Not to mention, if we kind of look at it, the role play of tricksters, in our like films and stuff, a lot of them are gray. I mean green. But anyways, yeah. So that's what I mean by that. That's how they're going to communicate with you. If you're on social media, you've seen hundreds of videos where people find these amazing things outside in nature, and they automatically go to, oh my god, the Fae gifted me something. It may not be the Fae. Normally, if it's the Fae, they're going to let you know in some way, shape, or form that it's them. Also, if you want to work with the Fae, do research on them. They're not evil. They're not going to steal your children. Just don't piss them off and don't say thank you. They find it extremely fucking rude. Um, and don't lay out chocolate, but I also did research, and apparently that's more towards like certain animals. Wild animals are not supposed to have chocolate, so yeah. Okay, there's more. How do I work with my ancestors? What happens if I don't know my ancestors? What if I'm adopted? What if it's never been talked about? That's okay, and this is why. For one, your ancestors, and this is going to go a little magical theory. Your ancestors. Yes, I'm that YouTuber who just lit up a cigarette. No, you should not be watching this if you are under the age of 18. And you shouldn't be seeing it either. But I'm real. I'm sorry. I smoke. Yeah. Anyways, I went to a psychic, my first like official psychic medium reading, and my ancestors came through. Around that time, I had just lost my grandmother, my aunt, and the first love of my life. Literally all within like a 3-year time period. Not to mention one of my great friends. And shout out to you, rest in peace, Tiptoe Chick / Doris. Rest in peace. You were missed, and I love the hell out of you. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, stop this video and go subscribe to their page, Tiptoe Chick and or Doris. But anyways, sorry, ADHD moment. I'm feeling the energy. I'm letting spirit speak of what I need to talk about. But they basically told me, the psychic told me that, like, they're around you. All you have to do is let them know. Which verbally you have to say, I am open and ready to receive. And what that means is basically it's signifying them that they can start really sending you messages. We all get messages from our beloved ones, our parted beloved ones. We've all had those moments where we've thought about somebody who has passed on, and then all of a sudden we walked into a store or started the car or flipped to a commercial or a different channel, and that specific song or specific scene was playing that reminded you of them. That is your ancestor speaking to you, telling you that they understand you. Now, in the process of that moment, I developed, without realizing I was developing it, something that is called the 30-day spiritual challenge. And yes, I know it sounds like one of those fucking, like, weird shit that you'd find on a YouTube ad. But it's simple and easy. You take 5 to 10 minutes to set out of your day. I do mine in the morning time when I have my coffee. You can do it at night. It doesn't matter, whenever you can. Try to be alone, as in you can have distractions, but it's easier starting out that you don't. And in those 5 to 10 minutes, you're literally just going to sit there and you're going to talk to them like I'm talking to you right now. Like we are sitting across from the room with each other and we are having a conversation. The reason you're going to do this is, for one, you yourself through this 30 days, the first 30 days, because once you start this, you're not going to stop it. You will start to slowly get there, actually start receiving those messages that they're sending you. Now, when I first started, mine was I started randomly smelling certain smells. Those smells would remind me and or trigger certain memories about certain ancestors. And the ones that I'd never met, that's when I had to go to my family. Now, if you can't go to your family, because my family even wasn't that much either, there's divination. There are multiple things that you can do, but over time, they will eventually reveal who they are. Now, I did get a very, very question that kind of shook at me the other day, which was, well, what happens when you actually do meet your OG ancestors? What I mean by OG ancestors is like the original, like the first few say 3 generations of the original generation that started your entire bloodline. Things like that, like way, way back there. I personally, besides having memories, I don't believe I've really came in contact with them so far, but just think of them as ancient and wise. Um, if there are certain ancestors and or members of your family that you do not want to have anything to do with, let them know. Just speak that. Just say, I want this, this, this. I don't want anything to do with them. Your other ancestors will prevent you. Well, why do I need to work with my ancestors? You'll probably think of ancestor ventilation. You'll hear a lot of terms online, but I wanted to say that you doing that, stepping up, working with your ancestors for one, that's important. But also the part of that of working with your ancestors and what they mean by breaking those chains and healing what your ancestors did in the past. It means, and I learned this when I was in, well, we're not going to go to the psychotherapy that I was in. Anyways, how you break generational things, I'm not really going to say a curse because curses are complicated, but it's repetitive patterns that have happened in multiple generations. Now, in a modern day twist on that, it would be things like alcoholism, certain mental, I do not use the term mental disorder, I say mental shenanigans. So, mental shenanigans that could be passed down genetically, um, abuse, drugs, and trigger warning, other abuse. These are things that are technically also known, financial troubles, things like this. In order to break that, you have to realize that what your ancestors did were wrong, therefore, by not repeating the same steps. Once you do that and you decide to be the chain breaker or the link breaker, you break the chain. You break one link in it, it completely breaks everything else. So that's one of the number one ways. So you stepping up and saying you want to work with them is it in itself is the first step. And then also making sure you yourself do not fall down those same generational things. In my family on the male side, we have a generational thing with the male side where it's known as my last name curse, due to the fact that every male has like anger issues, if you will. And it took me a lot, like most of the early years of my 20s, I'm 29 now, to actually be able to fully overcome that, and break that chain. Now, why would I work with my ancestors? Your ancestors not only, and through the process of this 30 days, the more you do this, because your ancestors, spirits, deities, they're not going to send things to you that you will not be able to understand and or like break. As in like a code. Like they're not going to send you coded shit to where they themselves can't do it due to the fact that your brain, again, spirit is not going to send you something that your brain cannot interpret and or understand. So always remember that, please. Your Akasha records, you don't necessarily need somebody else to access them. They are your Akasha records. It takes time, it takes meditation and or trance work, but it's possible to access them. Now, I have a theory on that I'll eventually be doing a video on as well. But yeah, start doing that, and then eventually, if you can, create an altar to your ancestors. One of the number one things is, okay, what happens if I have nothing of my ancestors, no photos or anything like that? That's okay too. Now, you can make this fun. What do I mean by that? You can actually ask them to send you things or to let you know if there's something you come across that they would like. And it gets fun because they're very weird. Some of the requests that I've gotten, the fucking early morning, Loki and one of my ancestors wanted leftover tacos. Not even joking. Leftover lasagna. Not even joking. But it's really cool though because eventually, depending on how your body itself interprets spirit is depending on how you'll get that message, whether that's dream. But please remember, when going into that, do not expect within the first 2 weeks to just get a dream or something like that. You're going to get discouraged. If you get discouraged at any point in time during witchcraft and or if self-doubt gets planted, it is the hardest thing to get rid of. You cannot properly perform magic, aka witchcraft, if you're doubting the spell that you're trying to do. With that, I'm not going into the conversation of manifestation and just setting your intentions. Magic in itself, witchcraft, is so much more than that. There are moments where you can just instantly do it. But in general, what you're manifesting, if you yourself deep down inside do not believe you deserve it and or you want it, it it's not going to manifest. When we mean casting that spell, if you've heard using an authoritating figure or an authoritating voice, the reason that is because it shows ownership. It shows that you know what you want, you know you deserve it, and you're going to get it. Spells work like that. It's just like cleansing your house. If you're trying to get something, I'm not going to say a negative spirit, but if you're trying to get some type of energy out of your house, if you just go in there and sound like somebody who is just like having a really, really bad day, but if you go in there and not sounding angry, not insulting it, not attacking it, but sounding authoritative, using that the mother, teacher, father voice, you know the voice I'm talking about, using that voice towards it. But yeah, I tried to keep this a little bit shorter. There will be a part 2 to this as well, and let me know if y'all like videos like this, because I can totally do this. This also works very well with my brain. So yeah, so if you made it fully down to this point, leave some type of heart emoji in the comments and or words of wisdom that you think somebody else should hear. And as always, thank you so much for subscribing, watching my videos, interacting with my videos. For the people that don't know, my goal this year is to hit 1,000 subscribers. We're slowly getting there. If anybody at any point in time would like to know and or book any readings, I do oracle cards mixed with like kind of spirit. But oracle readings and or any type of custom spell work, you can email me directly at firelotusthewitch@gmail.com. And the link tree connected with this in the description of this video will have everything else that I do, all of my socials, my TikToks, all of it. If you would like to support me in any way, shape, or form, the links are in there as well. I have a magical library. All the books that I have in my current collection, it's all formatted in an Amazon wishlist. That way you can add it to yours. And if you're not already, go subscribe to my podcast. Yes, I have one, Fire Lotus the Witch. You can find it on Spotify, Applecast, Anchor, and most other podcast platforms. That was a tongue twister. But I did an amazing 2-part episode yesterday with an amazing creator, and the conversations were mwah, chef's kisses. And I will be doing another one tonight. And trust me, you're gonna want to be listening to both of them. Those episodes will be released between this next coming week and the week after that. So go subscribe. Subscribe here, hit that bell icon so you get all the notifications when I go live. And like I said, if you like to email me or anything like that, everything will be in the description below. And until then, stay magical, and thank you for watching.